I hate to see that evening sun go down.
This is a catastrophe for the people of Tucson, that in the 40s and 50s, over 1 million gallons of toxins poured on the ground in the desert here in Tucson. And many of those have percolated into the groundwater aquifer and are continuing to percolate even now.
What really bothers me is that at the time that I went to them, they said that our water was safe.
My name is Irene Salazar. I was born in 1963. I was raised here in Tucson on the south side. In 2011, I was diagnosed with neuroendocrine carcinoma. It's a very rare type of cancer. Now, do I believe that the water had something to do with this, or the area that I lived in? Most certainly.
And they knew about these illnesses.
Roxy Castillo Robles, and I've grown up my whole life, and I still live on the south side. My daughter lives next door. My parents live across the street in the home that I grew up in. My father has COPD and very limited lung capacity. My mom has spinal problems, and I have been disabled after 22-year career at Superior Court. I started getting very sick. They diagnosed me with lupus SLE, symptomatic lupus SLE.
I remember 25 years ago when I talked to Rose Augustine.
And who's Rose Augustine?
Rose Augustine was one of the first people who uncovered the TCE contamination. And I remember this one meeting that we were in Washington, D.C. with EPA. It was her, I think it was just her and I. And this guy from EPA, they were talking about the young men with testicular cancer. And this guy at EPA said, "Oh, I think it's the food you eat."
My family's been affected. I've lost loved ones, but most recently I wanted to mention my best friend. Her name is Michelle, a beautiful person, inside and out. We grew up together. We were childhood friends, and she died of brain cancer. There's a lot of widespread cancers of brain cancers, and she was only 48 years old.
And Rose, which is a big lady,
Yes,
she's a big lady. I don't know if she still is, but she was then, reached across the table, and I'm holding the back of her shirt so she doesn't assault this man.
So you all been affected by the chemicals?
Yes.
And your family members?
Yeah. It's thanks to you that we have Superfund, right?
Yes, and they're, Kelly and Pruitt are moving Superfund. That is the only program in EPA they're moving. So, we have opportunities here. I don't know what we have opportunities to do. I really want to understand better what's going on. I mean, I know the cancer.
Right.
And it's been like that for 20-some years.
Yes.
But
it's just
now
too many years.
It's crossed generations.
Right.
And so, it's a little aggravating because if you have measles, the Center for Disease Control will come out and they'll do an investigation, and they'll send health investigators, they'll send doctors, they'll send nurses.
Right.
They'll send everybody to deal with this epidemic. And the people who get sick are looked at under a microscope. But when you have chemical poison and you have people dying of cancer, nobody pays any attention.
So what do you think the difference is?
And infectious disease means it will spread, right? So they're trying to contain it, where a poisoned community is already contained. In the case of measles and stuff like that, there is no responsible party, right? There's no corporation behind that. But when it comes to toxics, there's usually oil, chemical, military, there's somebody behind it.
This is really important that we empower the South Side. The South Side has been, for many decades, has been subject to several contaminations in the water, several contaminants of concern, which is including dioxin, TCE, and chromium, hexavalent chromium as well. And one other chemical that is very bad is benzene and chloroforms, including those and other more chemicals.
How many people die while
How
you're
many
trying
people
to
to
solve
die?
the problem?
So I think that one of the good things that we're doing though is empowering these communities. And I want to learn how to do this because you know what? I think this is wrong.
It is
This
wrong.
is,
It's
this
just-
is,
it's just-
to
it's-
me, this is not just
It's not
one
ethics.
thing.
The ethics of, any wrongdoing,
Right.
there is a system to deal with it. In this case, people are sick and our Trump administration is trying to take away our health care. So now you have people who are sick who can't even afford
Exactly.
to go to the doctor.
Her name is Lois Gibbs. Lois Gibbs is the owner and founder of the Love Canal Homeowners Association.
We were at Flint, Michigan. We got the readings from the water a year before anybody knew about it. And we were telling, Melissa Mays was the person we worked with, don't drink the water. Don't drink the water. Get somebody to do some more testing. And she had blisters all over her arms. It was disgusting.
So she alerted you originally?
Yeah. Way back, literally in February. And I think it all blew up in October, November, around that time of year.
I'm Linda. I am the top lead of the independent movement. This is a campaign movement we are working on, okay?
Francisco Preciado, and I'm in the tax agent, and I've been here for a while.
Keep
I'm
going,
María
keep
Elena
going, guys.
Preciado. Francis de la Cerda.
Barbara Molina.
I'm Mary Molina, about research.
Eduardo Quintana, I'm on the research committee and also actions.
Patricia Nelson.
I'm Mike Cease, I'm on the media committee.
Maria Freeman.
Chris Haldeman.
Orlando Gayor.
Joseph Anthony Gillespie.
Melinda Clark, here for the class action suit.
I'm Roxy Castillo Robles, and I'm with the Outreach Committee.
James Allegio.
Gloria Mendoza.
Ivan Gonzalez.
Melinda Lopez.
This is Lazo.
Carmen Meranza.
Here you are with a community that was poisoned by no fault of their own, who are trapped in properties that are not worth much anymore, regardless of how lovely they may be, with sick children and sick grandchildren, and there's nobody there to help them.
So get is your attention. We are hopeful that we could get you all to sign up to participate in one of these, thank you, in one of these task activities, okay? In order for us to continue moving forward, we all know that the Department of Defense, by now, we've given them 6 months to act on the claims that we have filed for the past year, since June of last year, 2017.
A lot of families, they're trapped in properties they can't sell, not how they are, they're not worth nearly as much.
And they can't get home improvement loans?
Right. We want compensation. We want justice.
And then in the northern end, they also evacuated, but they resettled people. Not Love Canal people, but new people moved into 200 homes. So about 700 families were moved. The 200 families in the northern end moved, and they rehabbed the homes and resold them in homesteading, which means that the families there had to sign away their rights to sue anybody. They bought the homes below market value, and they had to live there for 5 years as their primary residence.
This is the actual plume area. This is what is underneath this is chemicals underneath these homes. All these areas. This is Hawaii, this is Valencia.
And they were fixing a sewer line, a storm sewer line. And when they went to dig the storm sewer line, which was broken in the northern area, the part they resettled, they found so much chemicals around it that they had to evacuate the workers.
And who's doing this now?
The city of Niagara Falls. Most of the chemicals evaporated into the home, and so it was circulating through the houses. Now people are saying they have cancer, they have neurological disorders. There's like 700 people, I think, who have filed a lawsuit, even though they signed a paper that said they couldn't file a lawsuit.
We've got the science team here. The science team is going to cover block A, B, and C. They're going to cover from Drexel to Ajo, whatever streets are there, okay? You guys don't, just give an example.
I guess do you see any parallels here?
Yes, and then one of the parallels is that years later, the contamination remains. People are sick. They're sick in multiple generations. Their homes are worthless. And there's no escape.
Once we get all this house surveys done, all this information, we're going to document it. We're going to establish what's called a registry. Okay? The registry is going to be very well documented, and not to mention, we're going to take it to our government.
The city has maintained, I presume you know this, that the people in this area haven't had contaminated water served to them through the city utility since the early 1980s when it was first discovered.
Well, they had dioxane in there, and that didn't get removed to 14.
But they said that water wasn't being served here. It was being served to other parts of town. They showed me maps and everything. Are you familiar? Have you heard all these arguments? Are you aware of this?
They always say that because they're responsible. They're going to deny responsibility because then if they are responsible, then they have to clean up the mess.
Okay, they're called monitoring wells. Monitoring wells. Okay, if they found TC and dioxin here, that means that all these other wells also are considered contaminated.
I mean, the city of Niagara Falls denied there was a problem at Love Canal throughout the thing. And they continue to deny.
Even now, I mean?
Yeah, they said that sewer line, it was just a place they missed when they were cleaning up. Well, they never cleaned up the northern end.
This is government information. A lot of the government information has been very misleading. So I'm going to base it on what I'm looking at is the fact that it's there.
What time period were you here with the TCE in the 1980s? Do you remember?
When we were here before, we were Citizens Clearinghouse for hazardous waste.
Right. So, what's the name of the group now?
Now it's the Center for Health, Environment, and Justice.
And where are you based?
We're based right outside of DC in Virginia, in Falls Church, Virginia.
Falls Church, okay.
If you're looking at the way the houses are built here, you're looking at them to the right side, that shows you the vapor, how the vapor goes into your homes.
Want me to hold that up and you can point?
You can just show it to them so that they can get an idea, Oscar.
I was gonna do this, babe, and then you could point what you're talking about.
Okay, so don't trip though. Okay, so these are the houses. I put some of the houses here so you guys can see. So there's 2-story, there's 1-story, there's slabs, there's basements, and there's other ways of foundation in your homes, right?
I was working with Rose Augustine. I was doing the same thing I'm doing here. I just came out and helped them figure out a strategy and help them to move forward. And they did a really good job back then.
They filed litigation. That's what
they did litigation. They also got the Center for Disease Control to bring a mobile clinic here for a long time, actually. Several years there was a clinic. They were also instrumental in getting the cleanup of the TCE, which I always thought was a horrible cleanup, but nonetheless,
Right.
Where they just shot it up in the air and it dissipated.
Right, yeah.
It's like, oh, that's a plan.
Yeah, exactly. It was like just to shut people up in some way. We have some of the best university students that are going to be helping us with that. Okay.
With the vapor testing of their own home. With the vapor testing of their own home?
Yes. Yes, I believe that we're going to get some water testing and perhaps some air quality test kits.
So I was here at the beginning when they were just uncovering the first layer of the problems. with the school children, the drinking water, and then with EPA to define a cleanup process.
AOP is just basically all the waste into tap.
And so EPA, under Region 2, Judith Enck is the administrator, was the administrator at the time, that was just last year, came out and she sent a letter to every household on EPA letterhead that said, your water is contaminated, you should not bathe children in it, you should not cook with it, you should not drink with it. She used to be the Region 2 administrator, so that's New York, New Jersey,
Wow, wish
Puerto
we had
Rico.
her here.
Yeah,
She ain't nowhere, she's walked.
how long ago did this happen?
It's been going on for 3 years, and I think the letter she sent last year.
And fight for this, for our, for justice in this situation that we have. And we need to stick together and fight together and beat the system because they're killing us.
It's my pleasure.
We all
I
love you so much.
I'm so privileged to be able to come and be in this room with you. I mean, this is just really pretty extraordinary what you guys are doing. And it's a hard, long fight.
Thank you to Linda.
Linda's really working
For all of us. And think about what you feel, how you feel, okay? And what you
A
want
letter that you're very concerned.
about
And
the
it's-
issue, right? We're concerned about the issue. We're all worried about this. People have died from this. People have suffered from this. And there's still gonna be more. This isn't the first kid that died, nor is it gonna be the last.
No matter what.
You know what the city was doing? They had the water hose and they were draining, just releasing water out of that R9 well, that's a monitoring well for one of the tarps. And they were just releasing the water into the community. It ran, and then I followed it. It went all the way to the freeway, the little arroyos.
But why would they do that?
So I'm wondering, why are they doing that? Because
It doesn't make any sense they would do that.
Because
Unless they want
Stella,
to flush the well and then take a sample and say the
that's
well
what
is
they're
clean.
doing. That's what they're doing. I think that they're flushing them out so that they can test them. They're your good friends. Maybe they're good friends, and maybe they're wonderful to you in your eyes. Maybe they've done amazing things, and they probably have. But what they did here, they failed this community. They failed us, you guys, and you know it. Okay? We gotta fight these guys, and we gotta hold them accountable, and we gotta get these people out of that mess. That's mud, that's chemicals, that's bad stuff.
Which one do you want to drink?
Put a match to it.
Yeah, let's take a swig out of it.
It does smell.
It does?
It smells?
Oh.
Yeah, but it might just be the thing is, if you're taking a water sample, don't put it in plastic.
No?
You need a clean,
So
you need a
what
clean.
should I
You need
do?
a glass
Glass.
A glass?
Yes.
We need to organize and stand together on this. What is your passion? And maybe that's where you fit in, okay? Because when I tested the water at the house where my kids grew up, all the kids are there.
Uh-huh.
Birth defects and everything,
Wow.
cleft palate, cleft lips, everything. And my grandkids. And anyway, so when we tested that water, it said it was over the methylene chloride.
Yeah.
It was over the lab limit.
They tell us that it's not contaminated and the water is coming up non-detectable, but show us the data.
And what does Steven say about that?
I don't even know if I think he was more looking at the dibromodichloromethanes that came out over also.
Right now, we have to hold our politicians accountable. You know, they're there for a reason, and they're there to protect us. We have to hold EPA accountable as well.
I mean, do you think it's worth for us to even bother to go and test the waters? I mean, if we can't even afford it to begin with.
Yeah, here's the thing with testing water, is water only gives you a sample in time,
Yeah.
right? And so there's always an argument that, well, that was then and that's not true now.
So, you know, we have to speak up for our younger generation. And that's what I have a passion for that.
I'm gonna start taking you to the gym with me. I'm gonna get you back on the money.
So
I'm
do
gonna
you
be in
think
the
that
pool,
we could
yeah.
do this a little different, Lois, that?
I don't think you can do blocks like that.
No?
You can't
Okay.
do that. You're gonna fail, and then you're all gonna get frustrated
Okay,
and it burnt out.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work. huh?
What do you
think on the post? Flyers on the post of each corners?
Are we 20 houses?
Just came from Linda's house, and we had picked up Lois Gibbs and the ladies, plus Oscar. We had a round table before coming to the federal building for the protest. I can see Linda in the front filming the crowd. So, were you just walking down the street here?
Yes, ma'am. And then, well, I got a motto right here. If it ain't about the kids or the elders, I don't want to mess with it. It goes deeper than what everybody's believing and what everybody's seeing. If everybody just take time and see what's really going on, then everybody see what would need to be happening.
Nuno, it's time that we say ya basta. Enough is enough. We all have to stick together, okay?
Yes, Nuno.
And we all gotta fight together.
That's right.
We can start this movement. This is all about environmental racism.
It stops
okay?
today.
Yes. we
It
all
stops
gotta say no
today.
more. Today is enough.
That's right.
Thank you all for being here today. Let's give Lois Gibbs a clap and let's
A warm welcome. A warm welcome. All right.
Good evening. It's evening now.
Yeah, good evening.
I feel very privileged to be invited here to join with you in your struggle for justice and clean water.
All right.
I was here over 2 decades, almost 3 decades ago with the same darn fight. It is absolutely ridiculous and unethical that the city of Tucson is allowing people to drink poison water with full knowledge and just dismissing it. So tomorrow, I want you all to come back and we're going to find a plan to make the city of Tucson and the corporate polluters take the dioxin, the PCB, all of it out of the water.
All right.
Someone told me their water smelled like poo-poo today. No one should drink water that smells like poo-poo. People united will never be defeated. Woo!
Go ahead. And we're gonna have a circle.
We want clean water! We want justice! We want justice! We want justice! We want justice! We want clean water! What do we want? What do we want? What do we want? Hallelujah! Nobody else will listen to, but you gotta make it happen. People united will never be divided. The people united will never be divided.
People united will never be defeated.
So we're here at Pueblo High School for the meeting with Lois Gibbs. And do you live in the neighborhood?
Yes, I sure do.
And how did you hear about this meeting?
Well, one of our neighbors told us.
And why did you come?
Because, well, I'm disabled on both knees, my shoulders, and so is my wife. My wife is sick also because of the water.
We just wanted to welcome you here and say thank you for coming. Our students come from this community, and if I've learned one thing in my time here, it's that we're a family. And so we want our kids to grow up, we want them to grow up healthy, and we want them to have every opportunity in life, and an integral part of that is providing them with the basics, especially
So you ladies were at the march yesterday, holding up signs.
Yes, we were. We were having a good time. And we had to do a lot of walking.
And something that I just realized is that Pueblo is a family, and it's not just Pueblo, it's the whole community, the whole south side. We are a family and we are working together all the time. When I just met Linda, she was like running super fast and trying to explain everything. I'm like, yeah, that's me. I'm just the same, I'm running all the time. But we're running for a cause, we're running for something. I know that some people are slower than other people and some people are faster than other people, but we are running all together.
My name is Linda Robles. I am the leader for the Environmental Justice Task Force. I want to talk a little bit about why we're here today and who I am, for those who don't know me. I began doing a lot of research about health issues that were happening in my own family, my children and my grandchildren. I have a daughter who passed away in 2007, Tiana. She suffered greatly before she passed away in 2007. She suffered an illness known as lupus and nephrotic syndrome. After Tiana passed away, soon after that, my daughter Clarissa was diagnosed with lupus and the same kidney failures, nephritis. Around the year of 2009, my son Joseph was also diagnosed with some really bad rashes. Soon after, we could not figure out what those rashes were. He was told he had herpes, and then it was syphilis and other illnesses. It all comes out that those were symptoms in male lupus. So he did not have those other things, he had lupus. My granddaughter, my grandson were also born around 2012. He was born with a cleft lip and really barely made it. He had some other illnesses that were really bad, and he was a touch and go baby. But he's here, thank God. He's been repaired and everything. Also then, after he was born in 2013, his little sister, Adrina, was born. And Adrina, at the age of 2 years old, started suffering some horrible illness and in and out of hospitals. Doctors could not figure out what it was. She was diagnosed with kidney nephritis. Her kidneys right now are at stage 5, which is very bad. She's only 5 years old now. She's been in and out of many hospitals, and she's already been on a lot of chemo treatments. So that was enough for me to come back and say, hey, you know what, maybe it was my community, maybe it was the water, maybe it's me, I don't know, but I want to find out what's going on with my kids and why these illnesses are happening in my family. It brought me back to where I grew up in the South Side. Many of you know this area as the Tucson International Airport Superfund site. This Superfund site has been on the national priorities list since 1983. 2014-2015 gave the birth to Mother Safe Air, Safe Water Force. I struggled a lot with it because I didn't know what to do with it. I just knew that I had a job to do and protect children. That was to protect children. That was my #1 priority, because by now I know the water is still not cleaned up. What we all thought back in 1980s, after lawsuits, after investigations, we all thought that the TCE was cleaned up a long time ago. We didn't know what Superfund even means, much less, about all these big chemicals that they keep finding in our water, and the technology they use to clean it up is very complicated implementation that not many of us can understand. Anyway, here we are again after 1980s. We're here with another chemical known as 1,4-dioxane and TCE and chromium that has been monitored for more than 4 decades in our community. I believe that that's enough. Enough is enough, but we gotta work together to get it done. So what I did is I reached out to Lois Gibbs. Mrs. Lois Gibbs is an activist. I've now become an activist. She is a blessing to me. She has been since I've known this program. She'll talk to you guys more about herself as in her introduction. But I just want you guys to know that anything and everything is possible when you are reaching out to the right people.
Exciting. I feel very privileged to be able to join you, and I know that sounds really awful, right? How many people are privileged to go sit with people who are being poisoned, right? Yeah. It's just like, but I'm really excited about what's happening here. For people who don't know this, I'm out here in the 1980s, and it was Tucsonians for a Clean Environment. And I was out there working with a number of, maybe some of the older gray-haired folks in the room, and really trying to figure out what to do about this TCE contamination in the Air Force Base. Yeah. And I thought it was fixed. I thought it was fixed years ago. How dare they poison you for 3 decades? 3 decades. You know somebody knows that you're being poisoned. You know somebody knows how you're being poisoned, and they have made a decision that it's perfectly okay to poison you. That's just not right. And so I agreed to come out to see if we can have a conversation and to put together a plan to reinvigorate the movement of people in this community to not only fix the problems, but make sure the problems are fixed and it's monitored in a positive, progressive way, that 3 decades from now, somebody isn't coming here and saying, what? It's not fixed yet? We won everything at Love Canal we asked for. We won everything we asked for. We got relocation, we got cleanup, we got monitoring. We won everything. But we won it not because we played by the rules. If you walk away with nothing else today, understand that the rules of engagement, the rules by the City Hall, the City Council, the state of Arizona, the Federal Environmental Protection Agency, are rules that are established for the sole purpose of keeping you on the margins. The rules were set by the guy who's trying to protect his money, the corporations, and everything but the people. Rules are not your rules. They are their rules to control you. All I'm saying is when they tell you you can't do this or there's no way to do this, you say, whose rule is that? It doesn't say in the Constitution of the United States of America that a little bit of TCE is fine for human consumption. Who says that? EPA says that. The polluter says that. We don't say that. There is no exposure to TCE or chromium or any of the other chemicals, the dioxins. No exposure is safe, period. There is absolutely no reason why you should be drinking poisoned water. And I have a secret for you, something they haven't told you. And it's the same thing that happened at Love Canal. And that is, they keep you focused on the water. And the water's bad. But what is really outrageous that they haven't checked, that they haven't told you about, is the evaporation of the chemicals through the soil to your front yard and your homes. They call it ice. They call it vapor intrusion. That's the technical word for it. What it is all those chemicals, all of you who live on the plume, and more likely than not off the plume, but I have no evidence of that. All of you who live on the plume, especially the dark parts where C.E. Rose Elementary School is, do people know where that is? plume? Do you know that the chemical underneath that elementary school is likely coming up? Do you know that that school, they got their new windows and their air so that they have better air conditioning and energy use, is closing those chemicals in the school? You cannot smell them. You cannot see them. They took a single test along the plume to see if there was vapor intrusion, meaning the chemicals are evaporating from the ground to the surface. So think of your children sitting on the ground playing. That's what we're talking about. When it affects the nervous system, children cannot learn. They wiggle in their chairs because their bodies are irritated. They get in trouble. They don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to talk out. They don't want to do these things that they get told that they're doing wrong. They don't have any control. They get leukemia. They get brain cancer. Young girls are sitting in that classroom with their eggs already in their body that could be impacted by the TCE. And when they grow up and when they have a child, like the woman we met this afternoon, we actually did a tour around that neighborhood, around the school. And we ran into this lovely woman. I do not speak Spanish, and I apologize for never learning, but we ran into this lovely woman and her granddaughter who didn't have a hand. Why doesn't she have a hand? They've lived there all their lives. Why doesn't she have a hand? Because right behind their home is a big pipe that's pumping the stuff. What's coming up from the ground is poisoning her mama and poisoning her in her mama's womb. 3 decades later, people in this community are continuing to be poisoned. So, I come from a community very similar to yours. We were working class, working poor. We had subsidized housing on the west side of our community called Griffin Manor that housed 240 families. To qualify for housing, subsidized housing in that development, you must have 5 children. So think about how many children were exposed to Love Canal. When I moved into my community, I brought with me my firstborn child, Michael. He was 1 year old, and he was perfectly healthy. I have to say, he was ugly. He was the ugliest baby I've ever seen. He really was ugly. He actually turned out to be a very handsome dude. No one told me that Love Canal was 3 blocks from my home. You couldn't see anything. It would look like an open field, just like you can't see anything in this community. You can see where the wells are here and there. You can see the cement fence around them, or the chain link fence with barbed wire on them. But you really can't see something that says, this is a dangerous place to be. I learned at Love Canal what it's like to be a victim. I wasn't an activist then. I was a mom of 2 children. I was a stay-at-home mom. And I decided I needed to do something because nobody else was doing anything. I read in the newspaper about the chemicals. I read that they were leaking out into the community, and nobody was doing it. Everybody said it was low levels. It was nothing to be concerned about. And I believed them. I believed them because I have a high school education. What do I know about chemicals? I couldn't even pronounce most of them. So I went door to door because one of the things I did believe is that our elementary school was built on the perimeter of the dump. And that's when Michael was attending kindergarten and he was getting sicker and sicker, and the elementary school had to be the cause. I did not believe at the time that the chemicals had moved all the way to my home. So I went door to door with a petition, and it took a very short time for me to realize that it wasn't just the school children, and it wasn't just the school property, that in fact our entire neighborhood was sick, just like your neighborhood. That our entire neighborhood had cancer, had kidney disease, had bladder disease, had central nervous system problems, and especially the children. So what I thought is all we had to do is to get action was for me and my friends to figure out the science behind it. What we need to do is do a health study and prove beyond the shadow of a doubt that we were dying and our children were sick and our women were miscarrying babies or having stillborn babies. And so we went out, and this is a belief, and I've heard it in this neighborhood, that if we have the science, if we prove, if we show that we're sick, if we show TCE is here, that somebody will fix it. So we went out and did a health study, and in our health study we found that 56% of our children were born with birth defects. 56%, over half of our children had 3 ears, double rows of teeth, extra fingers, extra toes, or were mentally retarded. We found that at the time there were 22 women who were pregnant. And of the 22 pregnancies, only 4 normal babies were born. The rest of those pregnancies ended in miscarriages, stillborn babies, or birth defected children. And we presented this to the government because we now have proof. We have proof that we are sick. We have proof that we are harmed. And when we did, and we presented it to them, they threw it on the floor. Literally, threw it on the floor. And said, this is useless housewife data collected by people who have a vested interest in the outcome. Why is it that when the Air Force Base or EPA present data and somehow not a vested interest in the outcome? Right? They got to pay to clean it up. There's a vested interest as far as I can see. And certainly at Love Canal there was a vested interest from the other side. So we got the health department to come in and actually do a study. It was just like, yay! I know you guys are trying to get people to come in here and do a study. Yay! No! No. No yay. No yay. I didn't know it at the time. I do now. And this is not just true of Love Canal, by the way. I've been doing this for 40 years in other communities as well. They came in and did a health study, and they came to an auditorium not unlike this one, stood up on stage, and they said, well, first they said a bunch of science mumble-jumble, which I didn't understand, the methodology, the power of the study, this, all these triple-syllable words. And then when they were done with that, they said, we found that our results are not much different than the homeowners. We found that 56% of the children in this community were born with birth defects. And we were like, yes, we proved it. Now they'll do something, right? Because that's what we think, because that's what we're taught. Well, then they said, but we don't believe it's related to the 20,000 tons of chemicals over there. We believe that it's related to a random clustering of genetically defected people. Yeah. I'm like, what? So I actually had the privilege of accompanying Rose Augustine, who was one of the early leaders to this struggle, to an EPA meeting. And Rose and I were the only one in the room with this white guy behind the desk. And Rose was talking about testicular cancer in young men in the community, and that she believed it was a TCE in the drinking water supply, and this was like 3 decades ago. And the EPA guy on the other side of the desk said to Rose, oh, no, this has nothing to do with TCE. This has to do with the spicy foods you eat. It's no different today than it was 40 years ago. So the answer is yes, you need data and you need to collect it. So at Love Canal, and the reason I'm really upset over this evaporation of chemicals, or vapor intrusion as they call it scientifically, the reason I'm upset at that is because Love Canal, we did not have poison drinking water. Our water was clean. We were on city water. Our water was city water. 56% birth defect rate and the miscarriages and the stillborn babies and the kidney disease and all of the other problems came from evaporating chemicals that traveled 3 blocks to my home. And it comes up through the cement pad that your homes are sitting in. And it comes into the air of your homes. And the tighter your home is for energy conservation, the more toxics you get. That's what's happening in this neighborhood that nobody is talking about. Nobody is talking about this. I also know that there are innocent people, especially in the mobile home or trailer park, who are drinking poison water because the owner will not tell them that it's poison and will not supply them with clean water. How can a city government, and I'm just using that as one example, I'm sure there's plenty, how can a city government allow innocent families that are clearly of low wealth, how can a city government allow families to use the drinking water that they know is poison? It's gas, it's TCE. When you go in and you take a shower, you know how the window, the mirror in your bathroom all clouds up with the moisture, right? When you're taking a shower with poisoned water, the level of chemicals coming out of that shower head, going into your lungs with the moist air, because you have moist air in a hot shower, is 3,000 times higher. So if 1 part per something is coming out of the tap, it's 3,000 parts something going into your lungs. The answer to the problem is not necessarily more testing, although it is. The answer to the problem that we found out back then and 40 years has proven is still so today. The answer to the problem is you've got to organize yourself and you've got to fight this thing politically. It's not a scientific question. It's not a scientific question. It is a political question. Why is the city of Tucson allowing people to be poisoned? Who is the mayor of the city who's allowing people to be poisoned? Who is on the city council who is allowing people to be poisoned? We know the corporation that's responsible is going to allow it because they don't want to pay for it, right? They don't want to pay for cleanup. But your city officials, your state officials are intentionally allowing you to be poisoned. How do you feel about that? At Love Canal, we asked the city of Niagara Falls to help us. They denied there was a problem. They always did. I think today they probably still deny there was a problem. Because the city of Niagara Falls couldn't afford to fix the problem. Right? They couldn't fix the problem. So they denied it. So we went to City Hall and we fought at City Hall. But there's a difference. How many people think you can fight City Hall and win? A couple. Well, the answer is, it was a trick question, ladies. The answer is you can't. When you talk about City Hall, people think of things like government agencies, complex, no one understands what City Hall is. But they know who the mayor is. So at Love Canal, when we asked City Hall to react, they said, no, there's nothing we can do. Go check with our environmental department. Go check with the water department. Go talk with the zoning people. Go talk with the property. It was confusing. But when we decided what we're going to do is we're not going to do that. We're not playing that blame game. EPA does it, the state does it, and City Hall does it, which is go see that person. Go over there. We went after the mayor of Niagara Falls, and our mayor was Michael O'Loughlin. We were in every city council meeting. They had a little part, like 5 minutes or something like that, for public input. Right? You got like 3 minutes, 5 minutes, something like that. What do you have here? 3. You have 3. Ooh, we have 5. You guys are getting robbed, man. Okay. So we had 3 minutes. And what we did is we made sure that somebody was lined up there every single council meeting to say, what are you going to do about? What are you going to do about? And when they ran, and your mayor's running for re-election, by the way. And there are some people running against him, and I have no opinion about who's good and who's bad. But this is a perfect time to say to the mayor, or the candidate for mayor, candidates, I don't know how many you got, what are you going to do about this problem? Because if you want to move this problem to being fixed, you need government agencies to fix it for you. Michael Laughlin used to go to this certain restaurant every Friday. He was Catholic like me. He would go to this restaurant every Friday for fish. We knew that. I don't know if you know where your mayor goes, but somebody should find out. And then we would go to the restaurant. We knew he always went there at 6 o'clock on Friday night, just like always. So we went there at 5:30 and took every seat in that place except for the table for Michael Laughlin. And when Michael Laughlin came down with his family and sat down at the table, this is what I'm talking about, political disruption, which is not illegal, which is not something you're going to get arrested for. When Michael Laughlin came with his family to sit down and have dinner, we would talk about the problem very loudly. Did you hear John Kenny's in the hospital today? It's a TCE. Your lives are interrupted. You are here on a Saturday that you could be doing a number of other things with your families or your friends or yourself. But you can't because you've got to figure out what to do to fix this problem. And so, Mike just goes about life. Well, no, Mike, your life is going to become as miserable as mine. And so we followed Mike. Mike couldn't go anywhere. Mike literally, except for the bathroom, and I'm not even sure of that because I couldn't get in the men's room. But he couldn't go anywhere without us being there. We would go to we go to City Hall and say we can't sleep in our homes because chemicals are seeping through the basement, seeping into the air. So we're sleeping here. And we brought our children in our sleeping bags. Craziness that we created, that he said, okay, I'm going to ask the state for assistance. That's all we wanted. We knew the city couldn't do anything. They didn't have the money. But we wanted him to invite the state in. Because the state won't come in unless the city says it's okay. This is how it works. When the state came in, they didn't want to do anything either. And we didn't talk about the Department of Health and the Department of Environmental Conservation and the no. When you talk to somebody about that, their eyes glaze over. They don't know what you're talking about. What is that thing? And what do they do? And who's in charge? And who would you talk to? Instead, we went right to the health commissioner. Why not? He's the boss of everybody down below. In our case, it was a he. So David Axelrod was our health commissioner. And Dear David got Dear David letters all the time. And we protested Dear David. And we brought Dear David a symbolic coffin that was representative of our dying community. We did it on Valentine's Day. David have a heart, right? Connected to me. And David Axelrod got crazy. He couldn't stand it, right? And then we went after our governor. We were a small community of 800 families. My husband made $10,000 a year. So we're, as you can tell, we're a very wealthy family, wealthy community. But we figured out how to do this stuff. So when the governor was running for re-election, you have a governor's race this year? Anybody? You do? Does anybody know?
Yes.
Yes. Holy moly, man, you got it made. You got the mayor, you got the governor, you got stuff. Okay, so when the governor was running for re-election, we followed him all across the state. New York is a big state. We did not get in our car and drive every single day. We had children, we had families, we had school, we had work. What we did is we connected with people we knew in other parts of the state. So wherever Governor Cuomo went, a ribbon cutting, this or that, we had the same signs there. And in your case, you could have a sign that said something like, how much longer are you going to poison the people in Tucson? other side of the state. And we would say, here's our fact sheet. This is what we want. This is why we want it. And this is the only person who can give it to us. And then they would write a story about how people from Love Canal traveled all the way. We didn't travel. It was my Aunt Esther, right? It was somebody's friend. It was somebody's relative. You don't have to travel, but you need to coordinate it, right? And so the last straw from the governor is that we asked him to come to Love Canal and talk to us. Talk to us. Tell us why he's not going to do anything here. Yeah, we know Occidental and Hooker's responsible, yeah. But he can front the money to fix the problem and then go after them with their lawyers, right? That's their job. That's not our job. His job is to fix the problem. So the governor had a $1,000 plate dinner. Anybody ever go to one of those? I was just looking for the one that's going to go to the fundraiser tonight. Okay, so I couldn't afford to go to one either. But we went outside where the guests were coming in. These are big donors, and you know that the governor and the mayor have fundraisers here in the city of Tucson. They do that with their big donors. Their big donors don't want to know that there's anything that would put the election of their candidate in jeopardy. So we were outside the dinner, and we handed out a flyer. One side of the flyer was the facts. 56% birth defect rate, cancers, other sort of problems. One sheet of paper. The other side said, we are going to dog your candidate across the state as a baby killer, as a this, really nasty language but not curse, on the other side, and we are not going to stop until he fixes his problem. Well, we did have a spy inside who volunteered, didn't pay. Nobody who we liked and liked us had anyone to pay. So the volunteer inside said, which was really interesting, is that when the governor came out, there was all this conversation, first of all, in the room about the riffraff outside, and how the riffraff is really hurting the candidate's chances, and the riffraff this, and the riffraff that. And then when the governor came out, the governor came to a podium, much like that one, and instead of talking about his education bill and transportation bill and job bill, and they all say the same thing, just different words, he came out and the first thing he said is, I'm going to take care of the Love Canal situation. And no, it's not going to be cleaned up in your lifetime, unless you all decide you've got to do something different. Citizen advisory councils, for whether it's the dry cleaners, whether it's TCE plume, whether it's something else, those are only places in which you could get information, and I think that you could join or not join. I mean, I highly advise leadership not to join those. I do advise they have somebody on there that's like people who know data, people who understand that stuff, so that they can feed information into the community. But they look at the citizen advisory boards as a smokescreen for doing anything real, both with the citizens. And I mean, they wouldn't come here and talk to these folks, I will bet. Okay, so you want to know more secondary school. What does that translate to? So let me suggest something.
It used to be one when those street lights shine. But tonight old St. Louis ain't no friend of mine.
It's a free clinic. It doesn't matter about your
'Cause some nameless key has taken a hold of me.
Right, so it's a free zone.
This town ain't no longer what it used to be.
That was in this community that went away.
Yeah, cover your head, drowned in mystery. Shake what I'm saying along with a tumbler of salt. 'Cause what happened to St. Louis is everyone's fault. There are things now afoot walking round in everyone's shoes.